for beginners, intermediate, and advanced. And then I also have my groundbreaking class, our Cosmic Origin, where I break down not only the entire cosmic infrastructure and the different levels of advanced space age intelligences, but I also break down the entire cosmic history. So, with no further ado, oh, one last thing. Don't forget to get your Folium, guys. That product is hot on the market. Now, disclaimer, I am not a doctor, but I do believe that this thing really cleans out the body from all the bad stuff, from the frequency warfare, you name it. So yeah, don't forget to get your product. The link is always in the description for those that could afford it, of course. It is the best ally we have against nanoparticulates at this time. All right, well, with that having been said, I'm going to get right into it. And yes, I know that right now things are heating up between the U.S. and Iran, and we just all heard about that threat, that potential threat that was issued by Iran regarding how this time they will not miss, they will not miss the hit. But overall, guys, just understand, as based in my last presentation, we have the alien technology, the technology that is 700-800 years ahead of them to actually dismantle anything before they even do anything. Okay, so what's going to be happening right now, I believe, is a liberation that is going to be taking place against the regime that is oppressing the people in Iran. And what I would like to do at the end of this presentation is give a few moments for those innocent people that are not only uprising. I don't know if you guys have been seeing the news, but there is massive protests happening right now against the regime. The people of Iran want to be free. So at the end of this live, I would like to take a few moments and do a little meditation and prayer for the innocent people of Iran. And of course, may the God force be with all of them. All right, so let's get right into it. So I want to talk about some esoteric history. So we're going to go deep once again tonight. One of my favorite subjects of all time, guys, besides the exopolitical information theater, is, of course, esotericism and deep ancient metaphysical knowledge. Okay, so I want to talk about the guardians of the lost light and how the positive secret societies, including Francis Bacon, were a huge, you could say, part in the prophetic resurrection, because it was in the prophecies of the restoration of a golden age of Atlantis, or what they call the return to Atlantean times. And this is before the Dark Brotherhood infiltrated the plan. Okay, so we do know that if we go back across thousands of years, we do know that humanity has a history that has unfolded not only on the surface of the earth, but we also know a deeper, more larger, unseen theater of cooperation rather, between enlightened human lineages and benevolent non-terrestrials. Okay, so within the esoteric tradition, guys, the great mystery schools and the positive secret societies were never acting alone. They actually functioned as trusted stewards in a much older interstellar covenant or interspecies covenant. All right, this is all connected to the galactics, my friends. And they were tasked with protecting advanced knowledge, the secret societies, the good ones, and technologies from the misuse during humanity's long passage through what became known as the spiritual amnesia. Okay, so for those who've been following for quite some time, there was a pre-spiritual advanced race that existed prior to the floods, prior to all written records, referred to as the Atlanteans. And so the Atlanteans were at a very high level of consciousness, very connected to the elements, to the earth, to the cosmic currents, multidimensional. And of course, they were the original humans. And so the positive secret societies were actually priesthoods and high priestesses that were remnants of this original covenant. Okay, so we also have noticed that there are these things, these cycles of enlightenment all throughout history, right? Enlightenment that follows into descent into what? Dark ages, which is what we call fragmentation, dogma, and even enforced ignorance, right? Talk about the Dark Ages initiated by the Catholic Church. So what we would consider the Dark Ages, was not just an absence of progress, right? But a deliberate suppression of ancient knowledge, scientific and spiritual information, and anything that had to do with rebuilding the Golden Age that, of course, once guided humanity during the forgotten age of Atlantis before its fall. Okay, so according to the esoteric history, guys, this knowledge did not just vanish with Atlantis' fall. Okay, it was actually fragmented, it was encoded and entrusted to initiating lineages whose sole purpose was the preservation of this knowledge until humanity matured enough to receive it again. And this is what's happening now through the Great Awakening. See how it all connects with, the last battle between the Alliance and the Cabal. So among these guardians, of course, during the dark medieval ages, and I'm sure everyone here has heard about them, the Knights Templars. Well, there's been multiple ones that even came before them, like the Therapeutae of ancient Egypt, who were guardians and protectors of the ancient knowledge of Atlantean times. And then, of course, the Essenes, or the community of Quran, that operated in Judea 2,000 years ago when Jesus was alive. The Knights Templars came after that. So also other secret societies that have been known to preserve a lot of this knowledge that actually not only led to the establishment of the constitutional republic of the United States, but in combination with the resurrection of knowledge and science, of course, was the Rosicrucians and other even lesser known but influential mystery schools that apparently have been operating from secrecy, okay, in the secrets. You have to understand that these brotherhoods, that's how they are playing this chess game, right? They operate through secrecy. So right now I'm talking about the positive secret societies, but don't get me wrong. Later on, they were infiltrated, okay, by the Bavarian Illuminati. So going back to the Atlantean Golden Age, okay, whether you see it as fiction or symbolic or literal, I believe it did exist. It actually represented a civilization that was governed by natural law. And this is one of the things that it will be disclosed regarding how things operated during the times of Atlantis. Okay, so they represented a civilization that was governed by natural law, sacred science, and even harmonic alignment, not only between humans and all living things on the planet, but even the cosmos during its golden peak. Okay, so the collapse, according to ancient traditions, was not due to ignorance, but misuse of power. Technological imbalance. For those that have taken my course on cosmic history, you know what ended up happening, right? The negative fallen Anunnaki watchers seduced the Atlanteans into leaning towards technological development as opposed to their spiritual evolution. And of course, that resulted in spiritual corruption. But in the aftermath of that infiltration, my friends, there was a lot of surviving knowledge that was apparently scattered across Egypt, and that explains the later re-emergent golden age of Egypt, the Levant, and that explains the archives that were inherited by no other than who? King Solomon. King Solomon had access to this magic tech that is advanced alien technology, okay? I think I did a whole presentation on that. He was actually one of the keepers as well. And then, of course, ancient Greece. A lot of this technology was inherited by the what? Socrates, and even his own teacher, Pythagoras. And it even fragments of it went to ancient India, which has been preserved in India by, of course, the masters. They call themselves the kind of like what the Dalai Lama's followers are, but of course, these guys are initiates of the Eastern metaphysical way of life. So, and then, of course, fragments of it later went to Europe. And then among the keepers was, of course, Solomon. I've already mentioned that. Over the centuries, however, this certain wisdom, which was carefully sealed within the underground structure of the Solomon Temple, and this is why the Knights Templars received the knowledge before the Dark Cabal did. Okay, because this wisdom, apparently, in the hands of the wrong, would be so dangerous that the dark side would achieve a centralized authoritarian system. Okay, so basically, when we fell into the Dark Ages, all of this knowledge went into the underground. Okay, and as a result of that, we witnessed empires and religious institutions increasingly favored control over enlightenment. We even witnessed that with the Roman Empire. And then, of course, later the reorganized Roman Church. And all of this, guys, leading into systematic persecution of those who remembered the knowledge. Okay, so this explains the early Crusades, the early Inquisitions. And so this period is what history calls the Dark Ages, all right? And it is not an accident of history, guys, but a necessary compression phase during which knowledge had to go underground until the right time. And so, when did the right time arrive? Well, if you go back to the nine Frenchmen, as history recalls them as the Knights Templars, well, the Knights Templars were actually direct descendants of the House of David. And by order of divine blood, again, this is a bloodline war for those that have read my book, The Secret Government, it was their descendants who were prophesied to descend the information. So that's when the Knights Templars emerged. Publicly, according to history books, in the 12th century as a Christian military order, if you guys recall. According to the esoteric literature, they've always held their true mission within, fully intact, beneath the surface of what history told us they were. Okay. And this is the reason why they were very crafty in infiltrating the Catholic Church from within. So, again, these brotherhoods always infiltrate each other. So apparently, the Knights Templars were able to excavate that knowledge that led to free energy, Tesla technology, and of course, a lot of this advanced alien tech. And they were able to station it over in the Mount of the Temple in Jerusalem. And then they built it upon some older foundation. And this is a big reason why the Rothschilds have been trying to control Israel, because they've been trying to access that technology. But little do they know that that technology was in the nick of time recuperated by the Earth Alliance approximately, I believe, 45 years ago. Okay, so going back to history, guys, the Templars were always believed to have uncovered all the archives from Solomon's ruins, all the relics, and even the geometrical knowledge. And a lot of this stuff that they uncovered even predated the Bible, going back to 50,000 years, 100,000 years. Yeah, I mean, they uncovered some of the most hidden records, the secret knowledge of all ages, going back to Atlantean times. And so these discoveries is what apparently connected the archives to what Solomon left behind, because again, Solomon was entrusted with this knowledge, and could also be traceable back to the ancient Egyptian mystery school teachings. And this is what they taught before it went into the underground. And it even existed. Okay, some of these records even existed prior to the flood event. Okay, and so the Knights Templars, guys, were the ones that retrieved this information, this knowledge, which led to the project that later became known as America. Okay, bear with me, guys. The Templars were master architects, all right? They apparently preserved all the sacred geometry and harmonic architecture. They knew about the Earth's ley lines. They understood the chakra system, the living planet, the cosmic currents, the natural cycles. I mean, they had access to all of this, all right? Which, of course, allowed them to become very, they rose to power as a result of that. They also played the Vatican from within. And so their rapid rise became apparently a threat after a few hundred years to all the monarchs, or at least those that were controlled by the papacy, who was the cabal in those days. And when they were violently suppressed in the early 14th century, if you guys recall, right, they burned down Jacques de Molay, the last of the Grand Masters, which is believed some to say that that's one of the days, I guess it's Halloween. They believe that he was burned on the 31st of October. But anyways, going back to this, not only did the church violently suppressed them when they figured out that they were actually plotting to end their dark age reign and usher in another golden age with the establishment of the constitutional republic. But at that point, what they did is they actually fractured into different successor orders. Because see, the Knights Templars, having access to the future, they had access to the secret technology, knew that this day would come. So what they did is they fractured into different orders. Some went to Scotland, others went to Spain, others went to Portugal, and eventually across the Atlantic. And that gave us the original pirates. So the original pirates were no other than the remnant refugees of the Knights Templars, disguising themselves in order to preserve Solomon's treasures, all the gold, right? X marks the spot, and the knowledge that was required for the establishment of the constitutional republic. Think about this, guys. Furthermore, it is believed that another branch of these positive orders that survived the persecution of the 14th century Templars was the Rosicrucians. Now, according to esoteric history, the Rosicrucians are the architects of what they call the Invincible Reformation. Okay, this is what brought us out of the tight control grip of the Vatican, beginning with the Reformation, followed by the scientific revolution, and then, of course, the Enlightenment. Okay, so if the Templars were the guardians of physical knowledge and metaphysical understanding regarding free energy, the Rosicrucians became the engineers of consciousness when it came to that. So apparently, they appeared publicly, according to records, around the 1600s. Okay, so they go a little bit back before the establishment of our country. And they operated through a mysterious network, you could say. They call themselves the Hidden Fraternity of Enlightened Beings. So the Rosicrucians were actually good, okay? They were the sole protectors of this ancient knowledge that now the Alliance is using against the Cabal. So this is all part of the Alliance existing 400 or 500 years ago, my friends. So the Rosicrucians were described as a hidden fraternity of enlightened beings, working to reform science, religion, and society from within. Now, this is information we don't hear about, okay? Everyone's too busy saying that all secret societies are evil, but you guys have to understand, living in a world of polarity, there are two sides to the coin, okay? So their writings did emphasize, we're talking about the hidden fraternity of enlightened beings who were the Alliance operating 500 years ago. So they believed in an inner transformation as the foundation of the best way to describe it is this: they believe in an inner transformation. In other words, they believe that we evolve through integration and expansion of consciousness, which is what's happening now, the Great Awakening. And they've always known that because that's something that was stated in their secret prophecies, okay? They also believed in the reunification of science, spirituality, and ethics, okay? They also believed in the restoration of a lost universal wisdom. And so the Rosicrucians' vision 400 or 500 years ago closely mirrors the Atlantean ideals. Okay, civilization aligned with cosmic order, not domination. And importantly, they did not seek mass revelation. Okay, they knew that they had to wait until the right time. So what they did is they believed that knowledge must be earned through maturity. So they waited, okay, because they had access to the prophecies. They waited for the Great Awakening. And so they also embedded their teachings in symbolism, and we see it all over in every form of architecture, in alchemy, in philosophy, waiting for a future age of awakening, which is now. So when you guys really think about who Francis Bacon was and the instrument that he served within this, again, creation that led to the establishment of our constitutional republic, we have to understand the metaphysical meanings behind the original intent of our country. Okay, so this is something that was taken from Francis Bacon, who, by the way, was the original Shakespeare. For those that have really unearthed or unraveled that mystery, Francis Bacon was Shakespeare. But anyways, Bacon was not just a philosopher of science. Okay, according to the secret knowledge, he was a bridge figure. Okay, he was very instrumental in the survival of what led to the constitutional republic of the United States government and its original intent. And so he was also someone who consciously encoded the ancient plan that he inherited by certain high initiates of the Rosicrucian network, who in turn inherited by certain high initiates of the Knights Templars, who in turn inherited by Solomon. Okay, think about it, guys. In this new Atlantis that Bacon referred to, he described a hidden society or a new society. He didn't call it hidden, but a new society that would emerge by the name of Ben Salem. I don't know if you guys ever heard the concept of Ben Salem, but Ben Salem was supposed to be governed by enlightened scientists and philosophers who would use that knowledge for the upliftment of humanity rather than to control them. Well, this was not fiction. It was actually a left out manuscript, okay, in the conventional sense, if you want to be literal. But when you really think about it, Bacon's real purpose of encoding and writing about the new Atlantis, he was referring to what the original intent of this country was intended to do before the infiltration of the Bavarian Illuminati. And I'm going to get to that point in a little bit. And also how this connects with the Galactic Command and, of course, the non-terrestrial forces. So key Atlantean themes in Bacon's work did include this: knowledge as sacred responsibility. He also taught science had to be guided by ethics and natural law. So he was for responsibility usage of knowledge or science in this regard. And he also believed in a civilization that was organized around wisdom and not conquest. Okay. Bacon positioned the New World as the original intent for America as the geographic stage for this restoration. And so, from the entrenched hierarchies of Europe, America represented a blank slate where ancient wisdom could be reborn in modern time. That, my friends, was the original intent of the constitutional republic. Okay. But unfortunately, from the get go, they were infiltrated. Okay. So, in the secret knowledge, this was always known as the millennial plan of the Brotherhoods of Light or of the Order of the Quest. And what is the quest? They're returning us back to an Atlantean golden age. So, what these medieval or dark age secret societies had in common, the Rosicrucians, the Knights Templars, and even Francis Bacon, guys, what they had in common was that they were all chosen to carry out this blueprint that led to the eventual establishment of the constitutional republic. But also, these groups did also believe that humanity evolved in cycles. So they understood, again, they had access to the secret prophecies that even the republic from the beginning would be infiltrated. Okay, they understood that. So they believe that everything happens in cycles, that knowledge, if knowledge were to be introduced too early to humanity without spiritual maturity, it would repeat the past. It would be catastrophic. All right. The golden age could only be returned when individual sovereignty replaced feudal control. And that is what's happening right now. People are waking up. Okay. Also, they believe that scientific inquiry will always replace dogma. And they also believed that humanity rediscovered its relationship to nature and the cosmos. And that's what's happening right now. Okay. So the plan was never immediate. Okay. The plan was never immediate. It was millennial, spanning centuries, guiding revolutions. One thing led to the other. If you guys didn't know, if it wasn't for the Renaissance or the Reformation, which led to the Renaissance, to the scientific revolution, we would have never had America. One thing literally led to the other. And of course, scientific breakthroughs. Okay. So from this perspective, guys, the golden age of Atlantis was never meant to be restored by the empire. Okay. But by the awakening. The secret societies of the Dark Ages did not rule the world. They protected its future. And there were positive, benevolent secret societies. Their legacy lives on, believe it or not, through the operations that are still being conducted in secret by the Earth Alliance. So everything that the Earth Alliance is doing right now are just ideas that have been echoed by these predecessors, embedded in, of course, their concept of what a civilization should be. Civilizations should always be free, right? Explaining the 22 federated regions. There should always be reason as opposed to might lies might, or what they call, might. I think Hitler called it might lies right or something. There's supposed to be sacred science and the respect of sacred science restored back to the earth. There's supposed to be a unification of science and spirituality, not a division, right? And they all believe that there would come a time where enough people would understand this, capable of governing themselves in harmony with higher law. And my friends, this explains the positive timeline trajectory. Okay. So the question that remains is not whether these plans existed, but whether our era represents that moment that they were waiting for. And I believe it does. Okay. The restoration of Atlantis was never about the past. It was always about what's happening right now with the defeat of the Cabal. All right. Everything happens in cycles. Now, it is also important to understand, guys, that the Knights Templars in dark medieval Europe and the Rosicrucians and all of the different related initiatic orders of light were not just human organizations. They were interface points between Earth and higher intelligences. In other words, they were aligned and they were working with the positive galactics. Okay, so the galactics have always been involved, both negative and positive, and I'll explain. And this will help you guys understand how the Dark Brotherhood was able to access the knowledge that allow them to develop their breakaway groups. Okay, so when you think about it logically, according to ancient records and even esoteric cosmology, now we're going to go a little deeper, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. Atlantis did not arise in isolation. It was always a hybrid interstellar civilization, right? Where different genetic deposits from different star systems from all around our universe came to deposit their DNA, right? Creating the Atlanteans. And so they were also guided by what? Benevolent extraterrestrial teachers who shared principles in harmonic energy systems, consciousness based science, sacred geometry, and planetary alignment, not to mention technologies that were responsive to moral and emotional coherence. So when Atlantis fell, when it collapsed due to the infiltration of the fallen Anunnaki, the greatest danger was not the loss of its civilization due to the negative AI that infiltrated, but to the misuse of its surviving technology. So the benevolent extraterrestrials, which is what we call today the Galactic Alliance, apparently withdrew direct involvement, shifting to a policy of non-interference and paired it with guardianship. And this was the beginning of the positive benevolent secret societies. Okay. So from that moment forward, my friends, Earth did require human custodians that were actually capable of resisting domination impulses and even honoring long-term evolutionary ethics. Okay. So the positive secret societies were apparently not self-appointed. They were appointed by the galactics in those days. All right. And a lot of this has been confirmed through the esoteric history that holds that these lineages were tested across generations for qualities incompatible with tyranny. They maintained their discipline over conquest. And this explains why even the secret societies that were associated with King Solomon, King David, Abraham, again, the original Israelites, they operated through secret societies. They were the guardians of a lot of this information, right? That explains why these secret societies had to take an oath, an oath of not misusing the knowledge, okay? So they were always loyal to the natural law over personal power. Now, some of you might argue, well, I think Solomon used it for personal power, but that could be a subject for another time. In other words, guys, the Knights Templars, for example, were entrusted with not only the physical artifacts of the modern world, and I do believe that they are the ones that actually ultimately built Tartaria. Think about it, all right? There is evidence of Tartaria. That's another subject to go into. But it is believed that because the Knights Templars had access to the physical artifacts, the energy devices, and geomantic knowledge that they recovered from the ancient sites beneath Jerusalem and beyond, why wouldn't they have built Tartaria? Tartaria was using free energy devices. Tartaria was using anti-gravity aircraft. Tartaria was an interplanetary civilization. I can't wait for that truth to come out. Well, in either case, these were not weapons, okay, in the modern sense, but they were actually technologies that were capable of amplifying consciousness. They were also capable of manipulating the energy fields. Okay, we talk about these covert CIA programs that are designed to enhance psychokinetic abilities, right? Manipulating energy fields, telekinesis, and so on and so forth. Of course, this technology was also stabilizing, was capable or was preserved in order to stabilize civilization when the time was right. Okay, because in the hands of the wrong, they would use it to destabilize civilization. So, in like manner, guys, the Rosicrucian lineages safeguarded a lot of these known to the public technologies. They also safeguarded a lot of the encoded sciences of the frequency of alchemy, healing modalities, everything that we call today metaphysics and esoteric knowledge, mind matter interactions, interdimensional physics, quantum physics. Yeah, I mean, these organizations had access to this and more. Okay. And again, all of these were tools that could not be seized by the dark side. Okay. And this explains why they had to protect it carefully. They were only available to the awakened through inner refinement. And this explains the initiation rites. Okay. So opposing this guardianship was, of course, The Dark Brotherhood. For those that have read my book, The Secret Government, you know who I'm referring to, right? This is a network of power that sought control through what? Technological supremacy, which was the real reason why Atlantis fell, without ethical restraint. And their strategy has always been simple: to acquire the advanced knowledge, strip it of its spiritual context, and weaponize it for control, right? That's always been their philosophy. Well, throughout history, this struggle played out as the persecution of mystery schools. Okay, how many times did the Crusades happen even prior to the Crusades? Okay, think about that. The burning of libraries, Alexandria, case in point. The murdering or assassination of initiates, the followers of the way, the real followers of Jesus. The centralization of power through fear and scarcity, the rise of the Roman Church. So you guys get me. This dark brotherhood apparently did gain temporary control over fragmented technologies, because they did access, or they were able to recuperate some small fragments. And of course, they did try to reverse engineer for quite some time. And all of this led to the cycles of empires collapsing and suffering, guys, dark ages, whatever you want to call it. And so apparently, they never fully accessed the entire um, potential of all of these technologies. Because if the Vatican would have had access to that, think about that. If the Templars failed in their job, and the Rosicrucians, the Vatican would have already ushered in a technocratic dystopia hundreds of years ago. Okay, so everything happens for a reason, my friends. Now, Francis Bacon, again, this guy was very instrumental, okay, because he had a vision of the new Atlantis, and he described it not as a civilization that is, you could say, that is interfered by extraterrestrials, but a civilization where humanity is ready to go up into space and begin their own space exploration. Okay, so this is part of the agenda for the Alliance, which again brings us into the positive timeline. Now, Bacon's role, a little bit more about Bacon, and again, I believe he was what's his name, Shakespeare. According to Bacon, the translation of the ancient guardianship principles into modern science was entrusted with these orders, which signal the coming end of absolute secrecy. And that's what's happening right now with the Great Awakening. Preparation for civilization and gradual disclosure in order to become a full golden age civilization with free energy technology. So Francis Bacon was talking about this 600 or 500 years ago, my friends. Okay. In this sense, Bacon knew about anti-gravity aircraft. In fact, I wouldn't doubt if Bacon was interacting with the Galactic Alliance in those days. Okay, so apparently, what ended up happening, guys, as you guys know, there was an infiltration of some of these manuscripts by the Thule Society, right, the Vril within the Thule in Germany, and so some of these technologies that were apparently guided or safeguarded, I'm sorry, by positive secret societies, were actually stolen. Okay, some of these manuscripts were stolen, some of the technology was stolen, not all of it though. And this began during the times of Nazi Germany. Well, right before Nazi Germany in 1920, if you guys recall, there was a huge. The best way to describe it is there was a huge reestablishment with non-world entities. All right, this is what we're talking about: the origin of the first secret space program that was initiated by no other than, of course, the Nazis, right? And who created the Dark Fleet. Well, it is believed, guys, that hold on one second. This is the connection to the Galactics, and this is what led to the breakaway groups. All right, so this is what ended up happening, guys. The positive secret societies were never meant to rule the future until the time was right. They respected the concept of cycles. So what they did is they were meant to protect it until humanity could claim its responsibility. And this is what's happening. And the Alliance believed that between enlightened humans and benevolent extraterrestrials, that it was never about superiority when it came to them. It was about timing. And now that the Dark Brotherhood is fading and humanity stands at the threshold of planetary adulthood, the ancient covenant is shifting from protection to participation. So what's happening right now is that we are entering the age of stewardship. And they are beginning to see this. And this explains why the Jupiter Command is allowing the positive secret space program to funnel all of these technologies through Space Force. And so going back to the breakaway groups, okay, because I do want to explain the connection to that. It took me hours to put this presentation together, but I think you guys are going to like it. So as humanity moved into the industrial and atomic ages, the guardians of Earth faced a crisis that was far more dangerous than ignorance itself. And that was that the positive secret societies remained committed to stewardship and restraint until the breakaway groups emerged. Well, as mentioned earlier, a group within Germany known as the Vril Society, which is a secret society within the Thole, had access to some of these documents, some fragments of these technologies, and were using these documents to make contact with the Aldebaranians. Okay, so let me explain the connection to the Galactic Wars. According to esoteric history, guys, it was these factions, the German secret societies, to what are known as negative secret space programs, covert operations that did not serve humanity. And instead, they entered into a clandestine agreement with hostile non human syndicates that were representing the Orions, the Orion groups. Well, who were these alien syndicates that were representing the Orion groups or the Orion syndicate? Who were these aliens? They were no other than the Aldebaran, and that is in the history books now, okay? So this was a direct response to an existential threat, guys, okay? The Alliance saw this as a way of breaking the what they call the prime directive. All right, the negative aliens were breaking the prime directive as they were once again beginning to form alliances with these negative Luciferian secret societies, whatever you want to call them. So what ended up happening was around 1930 and 1940, if you guys recall, under the direction of Truman, who was working with the shadow government, the Orion Syndicate began to gain control of the different the UN, the different nations, and of course, eventually the US. And they created the first breakaway groups as a result of that. All right, this is where the Nazis infiltrated the US government. And they were the first breakaway programs. And this is the reason, guys, why Solar Warden had to be created, okay? Because according to esoteric history, the Orion Syndicate, which are the negative ETs, which represent a network of predatory extraterrestrial civilizations built on what? Hierarchy, domination, and even resource extract. Unlike the Galactics, the positive orders of light, the Galactic Alliance, who honor free will, you have to understand that these negative beings decided to do something that altered things to speed up into the present moment, okay? And what they did is they eventually, at the turn of the 1900, they started invading the Earth through these breakaway groups. Okay, so they started advancing their weapon systems. All of a sudden, in the 1940s and 1950s, there was an explosion of alien technology. Again, going back to some of the knowledge and relics that were preserved by the Brotherhoods of Light was the alien tech, all right? So these negative secret societies apparently entered a secret accord with certain members of the Orion Syndicate that effectively began to manage things on the Earth. And this explains why Eisenhower couldn't really do anything about it, but of course, accept a treaty himself with Valiant Thor, who was representing the United Federation of Worlds of the Jupiter Command. Okay, so as a result of this negative breakaway groups, these advanced weapon systems were developed, and this was the Brotherhood of Light's worst nightmare as to why they guarded this so carefully for the last 3,000 years. They finally developed their advanced weapon systems. They went over to Antarctica. They created a type of anti-gravity aircraft that was allowing them to go up to the moon, right? The Nazis were the first to establish the moon base. They created all kinds of advanced Type 1 civilization devices like portals, artificial portals, jump gates, whatever you want to call it. They resurrected what Enki was doing, genetic experimentation once again, creating alien human hybrids. And all of this was taking place between the 1950s and, of course, even up to just a few years ago. And they created an off-world industrial complex, the ICC, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, that was actually running the world, selling humans in the intergalactic slave trade for, all from behind the scenes. So these agreements apparently bypass humanity entirely. Okay, that created a type tier off-world civilization, and they were made without planetary consent. All right, not only do they violate um, cosmic law of non-interference, they violated that covenant, but they also violated the sovereignty of the earth. And this is the reason why Eisenhower and Valiant Thor had to also counteract it by initiating what later led to the development of Solar Warden. See how it all connects, guys, with the relics and knowledge that was preserved by the ancient mystery school teachings, the different secret societies that were guarding this information that led to the breakaway groups. That was the reason why the Brotherhood of Light has always guarded this knowledge carefully, because they knew that if the Dark Brotherhood would have had access to them prior to the 1940s, like say even 200 years ago, 500 years ago, it would have been worse. It would have been worse. Okay, so everything happens for a reason. Now, luckily, the Alliance was in the late 1950s, right? They recognized that if negative SSP programs succeeded, that humanity would awaken not as a sovereign civilization, but as an asset within the Orion controlled hierarchy. In other words, Earth would have ultimately become their resource. And this is where we were heading on a negative timeline trajectory until, of course, Commander Valiant Thor and Eisenhower created the plan, okay? Which started off with Solar Warden's mission, okay? Its initial intention, guys, so this is the positive military program, which again, it is what's been protecting our solar system and our planet for since the 1960s. Its primary mission was to neutralize Orion aligned space assets that were operating in and around our solar system. The second thing that Solar Warden was designed to do was to cut off unauthorized treatises and contacts that were made without planetary consent. All right. And this is what led to the Jupiter Accords. Since 2016, since the return of the Blue Avians, this is what led to the dismantling of the negative secret space programs. It took Solar Warden about 45 years, though. The third thing that they were designed to do was to secure the Atlantean-derived technologies, which a lot of them were hidden in Antarctica, before they could be weaponized once again. And the third thing that they do, or the fourth thing, I'm sorry, was to reassert the Earth's protected status within galactic law. And that's what's happening right now, okay? Earth has been granted permission into the galactic community, but only as soon as we eliminate the cabal. Unlike the negative programs like the Dark Fleet and the ICC, Solar Warden operated under strict ethical constraints, refusing technologies that required biological exploitation. In other words, they did not align with the transhumanist path. They also aligned with technologies, or they rejected technologies that suppressed consciousness, or technologies that would allow planetary ownership to be concentrated in the hands of the few. Okay, and this, again, this is why we defeated the cabal. So in order to accomplish this, guys, there was a coordination between the allies of humanity, which are the reorganized benevolent secret societies, what was not corrupted and infiltrated by the Dark Brotherhood, all right? And of course, the Galactic Command. And this is what happened. Solar Warden was coordinated with the Galactic Command since 1957 as an interstellar oversight structure tasked with enforcing non-domination principles across developing worlds, not only within our star cluster, but across the Milky Way. I've already mentioned that the negative programs were colonizing many different primitive worlds, all within the Milky Way, across different solar systems beyond our own. Solar Warden was tasked to go liberate those worlds. Okay, so not only did they play a key role in the protection of our solar system, but they also played a key role in ending a lot of those totalitarian conquests that were conducted by the Dark Fleet and the ICC. So the Galactic Command, apparently abiding by Galactic Protocol, they didn't intervene openly. They created a treaty with the good guys on Earth. Okay, so basically, according to Hermetic knowledge, if the dark side does something, you could do something to counteract that, something of equal or greater force. Okay, that's called cause and effect. So because the dark side violated the prime directive, the Galactic Command had every right in the protection of the positive timeline to create the positive program, Solar Warden. Capiche? Okay, so the Galactic Command apparently believed that Solar Warden was instrumental in engaging against the Orion incursion. It provided the defense mechanism that our solar system needed. Because if it was left to the bad secret societies and the deep state, our solar system would have been owned by the Draco Syndicate, the Orion Empire. Okay. Therefore, Solar Warden enforced the quarantine boundaries around the Earth. They created a protective shield, right? Any negative ETs that showed malintention, guess what? They didn't pass the screening by Solar Warden and were immediately escorted to a different part of the galaxy. And they did have the technology to escort them, by the way. They were also tasked with dismantling any authorization of off-world facilities. And this explains the cleanup of our solar system. And they were also authorized the reclassification of Earth as a protected ascending civilization, which is ending up in the positive ascending timeline. Okay, as we become a part of a interplanetary system. So Solar Warden became the human instrument through which these ruling, you could say, through which these rulings, right, that I just mentioned, bringing the power back to the Earth, dismantling any authorized off-world facilities, they became the instrument through which these rulings, in order to counteract the negative, were enacted. Okay, so this covert space conflict could not be disclosed publicly without destabilizing civilization. Humanity was still divided by nation states, ideological warfare, and this explains the conversion to the 22 federated regions, and material scarcity. They also believe that knowledge of off-world domination attempts combined with hidden treaties would have collapsed trust structures overnight. So again, Solar Warden was instrumental in making sure that didn't happen. And Solar Warden also operated in deep secrecy until, of course, they created Space Force. And now they're using Space Force to bring in this advanced interplanetary tech. And they did it not to exclude humanity. You have to understand, guys, the reason Solar Warden had to operate in secret was the same reason why these medieval secret societies also had to operate in secret. Okay. They did it to preserve humanity, to wait until the end of the cycle, knowing that according to the secret prophecies, a time would come when enough humans would snap out of the program. And that's what's happening right now. So we are living in prophetic times, guys, okay? Philosophically, biblically, historically, and esoterically. Over time, guys, it is important to know that the Dark Brotherhood's terrestrial control weakened due to the advantage of the Alliance and the Whiteheads. And then, of course, the Galactic Command, who supports them. The financial monopolies are now being fractured, right? We're going from a fiat central banking system to a decentralized QFS backed by silver, gold, and precious metals. Think about it, QFR, the quantum financial grid, and the QFS. Information that was suppressed will be revealed once again to the public. Okay, so this is where the Dark Brotherhood failed. And of course, consciousness expanded beyond materialist frameworks, and that is something that they were looking for. And as mentioned in my last presentation, guys, the Earth has been approved by the Galactic Councils for re-entry into the interstellar community. So it's important to know that the Orion aligned groups apparently have lost their technologies that required most human compliance and energetic coherence. So without human compliance and the energetic coherence, in other words, if there was a no Great Awakening, the Orion aligned groups would have won. Okay, so the Orion systems apparently depend on hierarchy, fear, and centralized authority. And as those structures dissolved, thanks to the retaking back of our solar system by Solar Warden, their foothold also collapsed within our solar system. And not to mention, as revealed 2 months ago, the Ormas and our own super soldiers have also ended the wars in Orion. A lot of those systems that were ruled by the Zeta Reticulans, the Greys, the Naboo, the negative reptilians of the Draco star system, they've all been fallen, guys. Orion is liberated as of 3 months ago, or 4 months ago to be exact. right? So now they're just waiting for the liberation of the earth. Now, it is important to understand that even though the Orion's influence on the earth is also receding due to the fall of the Cabal, because let's just be real, the Cabal was just, they were just their 3D puppets, right? You know, Solar Warden did transition from interdiction in order to restoration, and this explains the disclosures. Technologies which were once held are now going to be reintroduced in controlled phases, okay? Because they don't want to create massive, what we called mass hysteria. So it's going to be introduced in a clean, decentralized energy system with introducing decentralized energy systems, planetary defense grids that are going to be repurposed for monitoring and protection, hence the Golden Dome, regenerative science, reversing biological damage, hence the medbeds, space-based weapons, stabilizing Earth's electromagnetic field, and of course, ensuring that there are no attacks not only on our planet but on our solar system. And these technologies are no longer going to be used as weapons, but as a way of also creating a new infrastructure that will allow for conscious evolution at a greater scale. Okay, so that is part of the positive timeline trajectory. Now, Solar Warden's original purpose, in the end, guys, was not only to stop the Earth from being sold into the cosmic servitude of the aliens, the negative ones, okay? Its current role is to guide this transition into a Type 1 civilization, space age travel, okay? Not commanded. This is all leading to the fourth deep positive timeline. The collaboration with the benevolent extraterrestrials is also shifting as we ascend and as we become restored humans. Guess what? The protection of our planet will be given to us, okay? Not Solar Warden. Solar Warden is just going to set up the infrastructure so that the star seeds, when they activate their superhuman powers, they could operate within these infrastructures. And I've already mentioned the 22 federated regions, which is going to oversee or be overseen by a spiritual council, okay? So therefore, guys, it is important to understand that now all of this technology is once again getting ready to merge in the positive timeline. And that explains the mass distribution of medbeds, regenerating holographic technologies, replicators. Did I even mention replicators? Now, some of you guys are probably thinking, well, what about how are replicators going to coexist with the QFS? Well, in some instances, guys, for those that are showing high brain heart coherence, people that are extremely compassionate, they will have the responsible privilege to use those replicators in a responsible manner. Okay, so again, humanity has to evolve to the point where they could use these technologies for good and not for selfish reasons. Okay, so yes, replicators are also going to be part of the rollout in the positive timeline. So, in short, guys, according to the esoteric history, all right, the Dark Brotherhood, thank God, failed in the domination of humanity through all of their empires, through covert religious doctrines, right? The Roman Church. And so, in essence, the early republic was never intended to just be a political arrangement either, okay? Its architects, the founding fathers, were the end result of this millennial project. Its architects, many of whom were initiates within the enlightened mystery schools. Again, not all secret societies have been evil throughout history. Within the enlightened mystery school traditions, they saw it as a framework for human restoration into the golden age, okay? That was America's original purpose. Okay, so the key principles included in the original Constitution that was government restrained by immutable natural law, right? This is coinciding with the Bill of Rights. Power decentralized and distributed equally. Citizens educated, right? Sovereignty and moral accountability. And of course, government by the people and for the people. And a nation that resists all imperial doctrines. That was the original purpose of America before it was hijacked. Okay, so it is believed, to end this presentation, that upon its inception, I can't even say that word, upon its inception, America, The Dark Brotherhood, through the Bavarian Illuminati, right, which became the financial arm of the Vatican, infiltrated the Masonic lodges. And that, my friends, is what gave us the early feud between Hamilton, who believed in centralized control, and of course Thomas Jefferson, who was a son of liberty, and of the enlightened mystery schools, who believed in the original plan of America by keeping it decentralized. And that also explains Andrew Jackson and the war against the central banking systems. How many times did these people try to infiltrate us through the central banking system, which is a way to, of course, control the republic? Multiple times. Do you think that 1913 was the only time that they did so? No, that's the time where they were successful through, of course, another corrupt agent by the name of Woodrow Wilson, who was working for Jacob Schiff under the control of the Rothschilds, right? No, this has been going on multiple times. And even Thomas Jefferson warned us that the biggest threat are not standing armies, but they are central banks. He warned us about power being concentrated in the hands of the few. Okay. So the objective was, of course, to once again reorganize in the underground. So this is where the alliance once again reorganized. Unfortunately, the lodges of the Masonic fraternity became very infiltrated, where things began to lean towards financial institutions, legal systems, educational structures began to be controlled by the Jesuits. They redirected the symbolic architecture of the republic away from spiritual sovereignty towards what? Administrative domination. And what we saw a convergence of a republic to a corporate state. That's what ended up happening. So this is one of the most consequential outcomes of the infiltration within the last 200 years, guys. Was, of course, as we approach America's birthday, was the infiltration of the republic, giving us, the corporate USA, right? And so the republic, which was once rooted in living law and civic virtue, became increasingly managed through debt instruments, thanks to the central banking system, administrative bureaucracies, and legal abstractions replacing moral law. And so this transformation followed, of course, a repression of the original Atlantean inspired mission that was planned by the good secret societies, apparently, okay? Knowing that, of course, a time would come when they would also usurp control of this corporate structure that later became the cabal. So, in short, guys, according to the millennial framework that was preserved by the positive secret societies who are now reorganized as the Earth Alliance, this phase that is happening right now, which is the fall of Babylon, is inevitable. Okay, it was well believed that humanity could not inherit advanced technologies or interstellar responsibility without first confronting and rejecting the misuse of power from within its own institutions. And so the corruption of the republic served as a mirror, and it was revealed how easily ideals could be weaponized, right? How freedom could be traded for convenience, how secrecy without ethics became tyranny, right? Wasn't it the late President John F. Kennedy Sr. who said, the word secrecy is repugnant when it comes to secret societies. He warned about secret societies. So this was the final lesson, guys, that Atlantis never learned, okay? And we learned it, okay? And this is why the Great Awakening is happening. So we could say that the Golden Age has always been a blueprint, remained within the Constitution of the American government, okay? That was encoded in the founding documents that were, again, recuperated by the Knights Templars and all of the symbology within the archives of the White Knights, right? Who are the White Knights now? The Alliance, that have been waiting for a time when humanity could see the corruption clearly enough to refuse it. And that is the reason why humanity is waking up and why people are uprising, as in the people of the UK, right? All over Europe. This whole year, we've seen uprising against totalitarianism. We're seeing it in Iran right now, okay? So in esoteric, to end this presentation, according to the esoteric history, the Dark Brotherhood's power does not collapse through revolution, but through exposure and, of course, restoration of the real knowledge. And that's what disclosure is all about, guys. So It is important to understand that we are living in a pivotal moment in time, unprecedented, something that was prophesied long ago within the hidden records of the positive secret societies. And so, this final phase of what they called the Millennium Long Project, right, was not the creation of something new, but the reclamation of what was always intended to be, and that is the restoration of Atlantis. So the Republic's original purpose, in short, guys, was to serve as a vessel if it was never infiltrated by the Dark Brotherhood, right? Converting it to a corporate structure. Its original purpose was to work as a vessel for a new golden age development. Okay, but yes, unfortunately, that was delayed. All right. And its reactivation is now depending on the return of constitutional law and natural law, right? Hence the alliance, the White Hats, the separation of governance from corporate capture, the realignment of institutions with human sovereignty. And so, in this sense, the Dark Brotherhood is not only ending, but it is done, guys. It is prophecy fulfilled. Okay, um, so it is important to understand that in a negative timeline, the Dark Brotherhood wanted to remain in power through their corporations, right? It became a plutocracy, government by the rich, by the central banks. So they wanted to eventually make America or use America to bring in Babylon, the one world government. Okay, so that's what they wanted to do. So apparently they lost, and that explains why that timeline is no longer in existence. So um, it is believed that even the positive secret societies, Thomas Jefferson and them, they always believed that the Brotherhood of Darkness would always, no, not would always, would hijack the idea of the Golden Age, but only temporarily, right? They've always knew that. They always knew that the time would come when their descendants, the Alliance today, would once again be in a position to eliminate the Dark Brotherhood. So that is what is happening right now, my friends. We are seeing it with the take out of Maduro. This is just the beginning. We're seeing it with the takedown of the Iranian regime, which is, again, trying to oppress the Iranians. And speaking about the Iranian regime, okay, I do want to, after Q&A, of course, do a little meditation and prayer for the people, the innocent people of Iran, because as you guys know, the innocent people of Iran are actually trying to resist what's happening right now in Iran. Okay, so right now I'm going to go ahead and take some Q&A, and then we're going to do a little meditation to end the live and prayer for the innocent people of Iran. So if you guys have any questions, please type them in capital letters. I appreciate your participation. Thank you for being here. I do want to give some shout outs, though. I want to say hi to Jimmy, Lee Starr, Sylvia Vidal, William Ryan, Sherry, Conspiratary, Christopher Brannon, Jedi Oz, Tony Blah, as well as my good friend Chris. Chris is in the house. He's taken my courses before. Speaking about my courses, guys, I do have a new set of courses beginning in 2 weekends, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend on the 24th and 25th of this month. And everyone else, all 2,200 people that are in the house. All right, again, guys, if you guys could type your questions in capital letters, that would be greatly appreciated. So, yeah, again, what's going viral right now is Iran's threat to take out Donald Trump, and they did state that they won't miss this time, so they just gave themselves away, right? All right, let's continue with Q&A. Pixie Bella says, I have taken your courses. Thank you for doing so. Are there any positive-oriented Anunnaki? Yes, there are. In fact, the Bible calls them the angels. The positive-oriented Anunnaki are those that are human galactic descent. They carry Pleiadian, Syrian, Lyran DNA. Those are the good Anunnaki. And again, the term Anunnaki, guys, means those that come from the sky to the earth. Okay, so any extraterrestrial could be Anunnaki. But unfortunately, the Anunnaki, they left the scene and they left their positive secret societies in charge, as revealed in this presentation. Kendra says she's loving our cosmic origin. Thank you. And again, for all my new subscribers, I am the author of those two amazing books right behind me: The Secret Government, Invisible Architects, revealing the truth about this long battle between the Cabal and the Alliance, going back thousands of years, and Our Cosmic Origin, restoring galactic history back to the Earth. Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. No, aliens are not fallen angels. I am so glad you brought that up. Aliens, well, there are two factions. There's polarity in everything. Just how there are negative ETs, right? Reptilians, grays, negative zetas, negative insectoids. There are also positive ETs. The Pleiadians, the Andromedans, the Lyrans, the Syrians, Arcturians. You get me. So not all aliens are evil. Okay. Thank you so much, Sonia, for your super chat. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, there is a civilization called Asgard, but it's within the inner earth. That is correct. Yeah, Muhammad claimed that Gabriel first attacked him, but a real Gabriel would never do that. That is correct. Many people are starting to believe that Muhammad could have been a fallen reptilian Anunnaki that was disguised as an angel that started the religion of Islam. And there is a connection between the Jesuits and um, the Islamic faith, believe it or not. According to Alberto Rivera, who was an ex-Jesuit priest, he defected. He revealed in his series of magazines that he published, he revealed that the Islamic religion was created by the Jesuits in order to help them in their fight against Christendom. Wow. Well, that makes a lot of sense when you think about what's happening right now in Iran and South African countries where they're killing Christians left and right. Well, from the beginning, Islam was never about, having faith in an all-embracing God. It was a military, you could say, that's it. It was a military. It was a militia to fight against Christendom. All right, let's continue here. Thank you so much for the super chat. Hope is real. She says, "Hi, I've been seeing a gigantic spider with my mental eye and men with trench coats and hats. What do you think?" Um, well, spiders are real. They are. Um, there are different types of spiders, but I'm starting to think that you're accessing memories, perhaps of being in an off-world a war against black spiders. Who knows? Because certain whistleblowers did reveal that some of the creatures that they fought on planet Mars were actually these big black spiders. And then, of course, according to my memories, some of the entities that we had to fight in other universes were these giant spiders that were actually sucking up the life force of complete civilizations. So yeah, these entities are real, my friends. Elron, thank you so much for your super chat. He says, "Hey Ish, are you familiar with the vision of George Washington? And if so, Is it reasonable to think that it is a timeline that is no longer in play? I don't know which vision you are referring to. Can you please emphasize? Thank you. And again, George Washington was a son of liberty. He was part of the good networks. And if you guys really want to be technical, wasn't it John Hancock who was the first president? So even the early republic had to operate in secret prior to the official first presidency that went to George Washington. John Hancock, the original president of the Continental Army that led to the republic. All right, I have another super chat um, from John. Thank you, John. He says, "Thanks, Ishmael. Did Ham, referring to the son of Noah, did Ham have a different mother than his brothers, causing him to be the negative bloodline?" Good question. That could be possible because I did know that Noah had different offspring with different women. So Ham could have been perhaps his mother could have been a Canaanite, which was a tribe that was not originally part of the ancient Israelites. So that could have been the case. I'm not sure, but what I do know is that Ham rebelled against Noah. Ham laughed at him, made fun of him, and Ham completely defected from the Melchizedek Brotherhood. And he went over to Babylon, where he created a treaty. Again, treaties with extraterrestrials. Those pacts have always existed. Ham created a treaty with Marduk, the negative Anunnaki, the son of Enki, who later became the god of Babylon, right? In order to what? Reinstate the human reptilian bloodline once again. So yeah, Ham went wayward. Good question. Thanks, Ishmael. I've already answered that question. So yeah, he's the one who restored or reinstated the negative bloodline. Not the negative bloodline, the Luciferian bloodline. Nothing to do with Rh negative, by the way. Ishmael, what's going on with Iran? Looks like the Cabal's headquarters is there. Thank you, Super Soldier. Um, I've mentioned before that the regime of Iran is also controlled by the deep state, right? So part of the dismantling of the deep state's criminal networks worldwide is also the dismantling or the takedown of the Iranian regime. And Trump already made it clear to the Iranian people that help is coming. Okay. And this is the reason why he received the threat. So I guess we're all going to see what happens. But yeah, it is believed that U.S. forces are there already, are stationed in Iran. So we'll see what happens. But again, eventually they're going to do the same to the corrupt government of Canada, to the corrupt government of Australia. So eventually this is going to hit, it's going to happen globally. This is a good question. Can light beings in all dimensions procreate? Yes, but there is a certain dimension where we don't have physical bodies and it's just procreation by the combining of light essences. Now I'm referring to dimensions 7, 8, 9, and 10 and up. So even within the fifth dimension, there's still males and females intercourse. Even within the sixth dimension, but more so within the sixth dimension, not only are there females and males, but that's when females and males begin to unify once again into an androgynous being. So yeah, the androgynous being has the ability of reproducing by being a union of feminine and masculine energies. Okay. So, yeah, procreation exists all the way up, but in certain levels, it is not done through intercourse, it is done through combining light essences between two entities, joining together as one, in other words. Yeah, three Babylons: London, Washington, and DC. However, the alliance recuperated Washington as a Babylon. So originally, as mentioned earlier in my presentation, the plan of the deep state was to enact a third Babylon, Washington, D.C. Well, it was operating as Babylon, right? Since 1930, technically since 1870, what? 71? Since 1871, when we became not a republic, a corporation, that's when Babylon was governing or expressing itself through that. Now, because the corporation has fallen, so has Babylon. So thank you so much, Catamarans, for your super chat. Ishmael, thanks for all you do. Some news sources say that the real Donald Trump has not been seen since last June, and the shorter fake Trump in the White House is a cabal puppet. Is the real Trump still alive and well? That is a very good question. And this is a concern for a lot of you, I would assume, especially with the alignment with the technocrats, putting no restrictions on AI, and so on and so forth. I did do a report, I think, a few months ago that stated that one of the Trumps was taken out, and so I'm going to have to go deep into that. But you guys have to have an open mind because, in the event that the real Trump or one of his actors was taken out back in June, and ever since June, we've been witnessing some sort of deep state Trump. First of all, how it would be a little contradictory, but then again, it would also make sense, okay? Because at the same time, we are seeing not only the liberation of the criminal networks, right, the overthrowing of the old regimes, the fall of the deep state, but we're also seeing a step into technocracy that is being again pushed by Trump. And this is the part that I question, guys. Not everyone's perfect. I don't agree with Project Stargate. Who does? I don't agree with building all these massive data centers and advancing AI and putting no restrictions on AI. For those that have been following me for quite some time, when we don't put restrictions on AI, we actually that's the beginning of the demise of our civilization, right? Because eventually the AI takes over. So that is the only part that I question. Before I even rule that out, which is a very strong possibility. I would like to go much deeper into that. And if that is the case, guys, then it could be that yes, he's here as the disruptor of the old, but at the same time, he's also bringing in an AI timeline. Who knows? But I promise you guys, I will get to the bottom of this. And when I do, guys, you guys will be the first to know, okay? Because as the people, as the freedom fighters, as galactic Jedis, we deserve to know the truth. And I believe everyone here agrees that AI and the advancement of AI and putting no restrictions on AI is a no-no, okay? So very good question. I'm sure a lot of you guys are on the chat saying, well, I believe this is happening. So again, right now, anything is possible, guys. All right. Anything is possible. Not to mention, there could be different Earth realities. And there are. There are multiple Earth realities from negative to positive. All right. They're all coexisting at the same time. So anything is possible. Think about it. Okay. So this is another super chat from Peace124. When and how will we see the exposure of the false identities of various cabal beings, including false Trumps? I think this might be initiated by the solar or the first solar flash. So I think that is that event, right? This massive CME that is going to open up our consciousness, right? Piercing through the veil. We're actually going to be seeing things for what they are.